There's really only two things that you need to become excellent at sales and make an unreasonable amount of money. I mean, more than most doctors, CEOs in America. Those two things are these. Number one is active listening and everything under the umbrella of active listening. And number two is behavioral awareness and everything under the umbrella of behavioral awareness. Things like nonverbal cues and many other things that I'm going to mention in this video. I did a long training in person for a wholesale real estate flipping company, as well as a insurance company in Kansas City, Missouri here. And I'm just gonna drop that whole training on what I did for them. So without further ado, go check this video out. Let me know in the comments what you thought about it or questions you had. And if you wanna contact me, there'll be a link in the description if you want me to come out to you to bring some of this heat into your office to help your sales team or sales managers. All right, let's do it. First, we have this whole format where we try to get you guys out of here in an hour unless you wanna stay longer. I think you guys are gonna enjoy it. So I was saying earlier, first session when I do these things has to be fun, because that's the magic trick, right? You guys gotta want me to come back. So when I was asked to come up here though, there was nothing specific, right? Because I have never sold insurance, and I've never flipped a house or done wholesale. But what's been fun is anytime that I've sold anything when I first started in this career, 2018, 17 is when I first launched the sales agency, I was selling a lot of different products for companies that were not mine, for things I've never sold that I knew nothing about. And that's when we developed this process that we have under the art of sales. So it's gonna be fun.
Great.
So everything we have here is gonna be more concepts that can be applied to anything. So when I was asked to teach sales, I was like, okay, cool, so here's what we're gonna do. We're just gonna figure out how to add awareness to what everybody's already doing to figure out what you're doing well, what you're not, and that slight edge is gonna be what you're gonna be able to double down on or find the gaps on. So that's how we do this whole process. Cool. And then I'll add some tactics in there too that are pretty universal, that'll work for anything. So I just wanna go fast. Do we have a marker for this?
Yeah, there's some over there.
Oh, nice. I'm gonna go fast on credentials because I don't want to talk a bunch about me. I want to make this about everybody else. But I've been in sales, is the only thing I've done since 2010, and 100% commission sales roles only, except for when I was at the Yellow Pages for a year and a half. That's the only time I had any type of salary. And I've always made over 100 grand a year since I was like 22 in sales, 100% commission. And I've launched a sales agency in 2017 is when we did this. Started out as sales training. And I had to figure out how do you break into a market that is saturated as hell. Sales training, everybody wants to be a sales trainer, right? So I was like, what the heck do I do? Because I gotta be loud. So I decided to start a Facebook group, and I let people come in there. At the time, it was agencies and coaches that were like selling stuff online, because that was like a big boom at the time. And they all joined that. I said, in exchange for you getting in here for free, I want you guys to book me sales calls in exchange for me getting to live stream them in front of hundreds of people. That's my only ask. And then I upload those to YouTube. So hundreds of people would watch me live stream these one-call closers for these agencies and coaches. And I was like, I don't care about your first call. I don't care what notes you have on the account. They're probably bad anyway. Like, I'm gonna take the deal. And so that's how I got my name out there. Over the span of 2018 is when I was doing that. And then, by the end of the year, that's when we met, right? By the end of the year, we had a bunch of sales reps that were like, hey, do you have a sales training program? And also, hey, like, business owners like, can you help me find sales reps to sell my thing that sell like you? And then the sales agency was born in 2019. So that's the whole story with that. And then from there, you guys you'll probably look me up and stuff. But like Jordan Belfort invited me to his house. I did a podcast with him. That was pretty fun. That was super fun. He's exactly what you would imagine. Brad Lee invited me to his place in Vegas. So we did a whole podcast about sales management, building teams, a lot of fun stuff. And then a bunch of live events and all that good stuff. So I'll let you guys kind of look that up if you want to. Don't want to make this about me. Cool. So first thing I want to go over is just a quick whiteboard on what you guys want to learn. And I got to structure two things I want to teach. Only two. So I think that the majority of sales are won and lost on just two things. Tactical information is awesome. Like, it's great to be well equipped and have a reflex for knowing what to say when you hear something. But what's more powerful is understanding why it's being said. So this way, when you run into situations that are similar, you can have variations of what to say. You're not stuck with one thing. So we're gonna teach those things today. But we will quickly go around the room. And I'm curious, why are you in sales? So why are you in sales? Let's just get like 3 answers, because we have 2 different things. Yeah.
To make money.
Make a lot of money,
Make
right?
a lot of money.
Yeah.
Lots. Okay, cool. What else? Let's get 2 more.
Well, for me, it's the residuals.
Does that fall under lots of money though, right?
Yeah, basically, yes, yeah, same thing.
Solve problems.
Oh, we gotta, okay. Problem solving? I'm actually not used to hearing that one. Somebody cares about people.
Why are you guys in sales?
What else? Why are we in sales? Why are you in sales individually, right?
I mean, building relationships.
Building relationships. Wow, these are really holistic answers. Cool. I dig it. Okay.
It's fun.
Wow, y'all are crazy. But you're right. It is. You gotta be a little crazy though to be in sales, 100% commission. Okay, cool. So I'll just leave that there. Why do y'all believe you're great at sales? We'll just get like 3 answers. Actually, let's do 2 on each side of the room because you sell different stuff.
High numbers.
That's okay. Yes, that's a great thing to know. This is how we know we're great. Is high numbers. What else? This side of the room.
I know a lot about my field.
Product knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the other side of the room.
Customer feedback?
Okay, customer feedback, because you're great at the feedback loop with customer relationships. Okay, I'm gonna put feedback loop. Let's go one more thing.
Creating scenarios.
Creating scenarios, like the storytelling of like the sale. I love that, yeah. Okay, cool. Where do we see room for improvement in what we're doing? We'll do the same thing, 2 and 2. We're gonna fly through these first 2 sections. Should only take us like 5 minutes. We'll go this side of the room. Where do you see the improvement? Go 2 things.
More sales. Maybe
Okay.
better objective handling.
Objection.
Yeah.
Okay, objections.
Objection handling.
I'm gonna leave more sales off because that's an outcome, not a part of the process, but I love that because we all want more sales. Let's go one more part of the process. What can we be better at?
Asking for the
I feel
close.
like, I
Why
feel
do you
like,
forget your
partially
dance,
like getting into the lead, like actually getting a hold of the people is probably the biggest barrier to entry for me.
Pickups, okay? And then we'll go 2 on this side.
What did I just say?
Asking for.
I bet it was so
Oh,
good.
yeah, asking for the close.
Asking for the close. Dude, I love that one. Asking for a close. What else we got on that side?
There's just so many.
Yeah.
Assuming the quote.
Assuming the quote. I'll put assuming the sale up there. Because yes, that is a really good one. That's gonna fall under a behavioral thing we're gonna talk about in a bit, okay? And now let's just go 1 on each side of the room and we're gonna say, what were you hoping to improve on your game in sales before I got here and before you knew I was gonna be here? We'll just get 1 over here and 1 over here,
Objections.
okay? Objections? I'm gonna show you a really cool way that we handle objections, even though I never sold in either of these industries, and how it's applicable. It's gonna be pretty sick. It's like a magic trick.
Wow.
Let's go over here too.
Maybe value selling.
Value selling. I might just put that over here so we can add some space. Value selling. Okay, cool. And when you say value selling, what does that mean to you?
A lot of it goes into like cross-selling or kind of tailoring my sale to what my client needs as opposed to like kind of just giving out a price for something general.
Okay, so like add-ons to create a higher LTV. Okay, awesome. I dig that. Yeah. So my belief, so this is what we're prioritizing right now. So the reason I like to put everything on the board is because as sales reps, when we're selling and what we decide to get better at is based on the priorities of what we're thinking top of mind we should be dealing with, and that's what these things are, right? So that's why I like to have it in front of us. Normally what I would do instead of this, but it's really boring, that's why I don't do it in this first session, is look at numbers. Because numbers tell a story, and I'm really big on the tracking piece of it, which we're not gonna talk about in session 1 because it's boring as hell and you guys will never want me back. But the tracking is where we look at the actual activity leading to the outcome, right? So if you wanna talk about, who said pickup rate? I think somebody, okay, oh, right, pickup rate, that's a big one, right? There's a lot that goes under the umbrella of pickup rate. So I'd be looking at the tracking sheets, if you guys keep the tracking sheets, whatever that looks like for you guys. And I would look at those what's called micro KPIs, key performance indicators. And when I look at a big spreadsheet of data, I look for discrepancies. So right now, this is what we think we wanna solve, but what we actually wanna solve is the biggest discrepancy, right? We always wanna solve the first thing that will drive the highest return for the least amount of time, energy, and resources. That's always our first go-to, and the numbers tell us what that is. So we're not gonna go over that today, because that's boring. We're just gonna go over this. So my belief about a person's ability to consistently be the best at the art of sales is gonna be these things. How to listen yourself into the sale. So I'm a big believer that we want to seek to be understood, or seek to understand before we seek to be understood. So the reason I like to have these concepts out there, and I constantly I'm like a walking parable, is because if you think in this way, you're going to think, or you're gonna act in that way, right? So what you believe creates what you think creates what you do, and what you do will create different types of outcomes, right? So if you change what you believe, you'll change the way you think. And then if you change the way you think, just by a byproduct of that, as a reflex, your questions are gonna change. Not because you tactically get better at them, which you can learn, which is always really fun, right? That's what people buy into with sales training. But if you change the way you think, you'll always have the answer. See how that works? So I'm a big believer in that. Next is, if you want to ace the test, 4 times than not, if you get the answers from the teacher first, and then take the test, you're way more likely to get 100%. That logic makes sense, right? Now it's like, duh, right? But here's what people don't do when they see sales. I see the prospect as a teacher. They've got literally every single answer I need to close the deal. So what I wanna do is phrase questions, we're gonna go over how to do this later on, but phrase questions in a way to where they tell me everything I need to know, and then I'm gonna repeat that back to them, so they know I'm hearing them, active listening. That's what we're gonna work on today, it's one of the 2 things. But when you do that really well, you're just repeating back to them what they've already told you. That's how you listen yourself into a sale. And so I focus on that, because if I do that, I'm never wrong. And the only way you can never be wrong is if somebody already tells you the answer. That's how you ace the test. So a lot of people try to come up with what's the right thing to say to get the answer that I want, or to get the info that I need in order to close this deal, or to get them to value a bigger package up front, if you wanna try to do that. But they're already telling you what they want. But a lot of time we're thinking about the next question to ask. That's why we don't hear. That's what we normally do with sales reps. So we're gonna cover that today too. And this is why I never need to know a product, because the product actually doesn't matter. What matters is what the person's thinking. This is why I don't talk about KPIs. First time I do training. Because a lot of y'all, even though that's how you get to solve these things without focusing on these things, y'all don't care about the numbers. You may care about them, but it's not your first priority, or we would have said it up here, right? But nobody said here, I wanna learn how to get better at retelling a story off my tracking sheets, right? And that's usually never something people say. So that's why we don't talk about it. But you can see this is why I always lead great training, so I never have to think about what's said. You guys already tell me what's said. Next is, if you know how to push yourself beyond good times and bad times, that's the only way you get to your true potential as a sales rep. So that's gonna be the behavioral stuff we talk about today too. Those are the 2 big things, right? Number 1, active listening. Can you listen yourself into the sale? And number 2 is, can you control the behaviors that lead you to become the person that can deal with anything? Because sales is a fucking roller coaster. Roller coaster, right? I've been in each type of sale, B2B, door-to-door, B2C. I did 6 president's clubs between all those different billion-dollar companies by the time I was 25. I've seen it all. And so that was with the Yellow Pages, Kirby Vacuums, and Lifetime Fitness. Did 4 with Lifetime, did 1 with Kirby, and 1 with Yellow Pages. And so I've seen every type of sale. I've seen the sales cycles, I've seen the price points, I've seen the ups and downs, and what it looks like to be 100% commission. It's a bitch sometimes. And a lot of it's keeping your pipeline full, right? So what we wanna learn how to do is not get corrupted by sales reps, and how to avoid sales reps, ideally, we're gonna talk about that. But if you can do that, then the bad times don't change your performance. Also, if you don't get overhyped when things are going well, and think that you're in a great spot, because now you got a bunch of money in the bank, or because you're number 1 on the team, or whatever, because that happens a lot too. You're like, dude, you can't talk to me on number 1. And like, I know, I was that guy. Like, you can't teach me nothing. And then this old guy, national sales coach, came in, put me in my place. First month he came in, I was number 1 for months at Lifetime. I sold a 500 person account. I was the first sales rep ever at that company to sell a corporate deal, 500 units in 1 day. I have the screenshot and everything, I got receipts to prove it. And I was like, dude, nobody's better than me. This old dude comes in, okay? I won't drop his name because this will all be on the internet later, but he comes in his first month, in one of the slower months of the year in April, he outsells me with no book of business. I was like, you fucking cheated. All right, this dude's like 20 years older than me. And so that's when I knew nothing. I was like, dude, I'm just not selling with people that are seriously excellent. That's the problem. So I convinced myself I didn't need anything else. And so if you can get out of the frame of mind that you got it all when things are going good, or that you don't have anything when things are going bad, it keeps you at neutral, and you're constantly able to focus on the fundamentals. The fundamentals are actually the thing that stop us from being great. It's not like the really cool next thing that you can do. And then as sales reps, we get caught up with the shiny object stuff. So I definitely get that. Cool. Alright, so we're done with all the intro stuff, let's get to the fun stuff. Are you guys having fun yet?
Yes.
I'm moving hella fast. Alright, I wanna get you guys out of here in an hour, unless you wanna stay longer, and then we'll stay longer. But, this is gonna be the first exercise that looks like a magic trick. And you're gonna be like, okay, maybe this guy's on to something. So, what we're gonna do, my grandma used to tell me something. She would say, Rob, never assume anything because it'll make an ass out of you and me. ASSUME, assume, right? So she would say never to assume anything. Okay, I'm gonna show you why. Okay, so does everyone have something to write on? Perfect. You're gonna want to write on something. I've done this exercise in rooms with 50 people, in rooms with 20 dozens of people. Always works. I've been doing this exercise for years, and there hasn't been a single time it didn't work. I'd be like, this is one of the 2 magic tricks we're gonna do today. So it's a psychological thing, and then it helps us to understand that it doesn't matter if I'm talking to people that understand insurance, or I'm talking to people that understand anything about real estate, let alone wholesaling or whatever type of real estate transactions you're doing. Doesn't matter who you're talking to, nobody knows anything about anyone. This is gonna show you that, okay? Everyone got something to write on?
Yep.
What I want you to do is I want you to write down the first 3 words that come to your mind from top to bottom when you see this word. Okay, we're gonna give it 30 seconds. You're gonna write down the first 3 words you think of, top to bottom, when you see this word. Okay? Everyone in here is good at sales. Everyone in here has been doing sales a long time. Everyone in here has a lot of life experience, right? You guys are enjoy this. Are we good? Is everyone have their 3 words?
Got my 3.
Okay, cool. Since there's not as many people in the room, we could go super fast. What was your first word?
F-150.
What was your first word?
Confident.
What was your first word?
Ford.
What was your first word?
Lamborghini.
What was your first word?
Fast.
What was your first word?
Commission.
What was your first word?
Payment.
We didn't have to get to the second word, not a single person in here thought the same way. So there's not a single,
Interesting.
yeah, you could do this, I've done this in very large rooms. Not a single person, even in large rooms, had more than 2 of the same word, and what's cool is even the people that had 2 of the same word didn't write it the same. Some people were all caps, some people had a capital here, all lowercase, some people were all lowercase, so not a single person in the room, even though this is one of, debatably, the most simple words in the English language, could think the same way. So you have to ask yourself, if you bring up any type of conversation or topic that's more complex than the word car, what's the likelihood that you're thinking the same as them, or they're thinking like you?
0.
0, literally 0%. This is why you never assume anything. Magic trick number 1, right? Pretty cool, huh? So this is why we never assume anything. And we're gonna go over some best practices on how to never assume anything. Let's go to magic trick number 2. Okay? I swear I'm not that strong, I'm moving around. Although I did hit PR the other day. So, all right, let's go into magic trick number 2. I'm gonna throw an objection at you guys. I want you to write down what you hear, okay? Not what you would say back to it, but what you hear, okay? So I hit you with the objection. I need to talk about it tomorrow. Or sorry, can we meet up tomorrow? I need to talk to my wife. Just write down what you hear when I say that. Not what you would respond, just what you hear. We'll give it like 30 seconds. We're gonna quickly go around the row again. What do you hear?
Uncertainty.
Saul. And let's try to say what we wrote down. This is another big part of the exercise, is you have to say what you wrote down, because sometimes when we hear things, we like to tell ourselves because my thing I wrote down is a similar variation that it was the same thing, and it's not the case. When I was training people, quick story real quick before we go around the room again. When I was training people, because I became a DPS at Kirby, selling vacuums after my first month, I hit President's Club, sold 90,000 vacuums, door to door, $3,000 units, 30 units, and then I became a DPS, which is where we recruited people to sell vacuums, and I would train them. And so there was this kid, talented as hell, super talented, super charismatic, super good looking, and I was like, why aren't you making any sales? I want to buy from you just by looking at you, you know? And so there's a big part of the demo with Kirby. I don't know, has anyone had a Kirby guy try to sell in some of their house?
No.
Okay, that's, thank goodness. But like, the big part of the demo is we have to go in the bedroom, take, $3,000 luxury vacuum.
Yeah.
That was, so we would take off the handle and we would have to go over the mattress, right? Because we had this little thing attached to it that would show us what got sucked up, and we would see the dust mites in the bed. You can imagine, big selling point, right? That's what you're sleeping on. So that was the most important part of the demo. And so this guy would say to the homeowner, like, hey, follow me, I'm gonna show you the nastiest thing you've ever seen. And he'd walk into the bedroom. And I would say to him, like, dude, what are you saying? Are you saying this line specifically? He's like, yeah, I am. I followed him around, shadowed him on a demo. That's what he was saying. I was like, we're not saying the same thing. I was like, that's what you hear, but that is not what's actually happening. That's why we're doing this exercise, right? So that's why I want you to try to read what you have written down, because that's actually what you hear. Don't be influenced by the people around you because that'll make you change your answer. What did you write down?
Not confident in making a decision by themselves.
Okay.
I'm looking at other opportunities.
Nice,
I'm not interested.
nice,
I heard you're not the solo decision maker on this.
nice.
I heard maybe later.
Okay,
Scared.
okay. See, again, we all heard something different. So remember I told you earlier where I'm gonna show you how we could all get better at objections without me knowing anything about your products. So something that I like to do that's usually typically difficult to do on a team for management is gonna be, how do I duplicate my best guy? He's a lone wolf, he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, he's just good at what he does. Like, how many of us have seen people like that in a sales team? Where they're like, dude, don't talk to me, they're like, you just gotta know how to talk to people. And it's like, that does not help anyone, right? So it's like, how do you duplicate that person? And so this is how. You notice how all of us in the room here, I'm sure y'all have put up nice numbers. It's like, how can we get all of us to hear the same thing? Because remember, the way that we respond to stuff is based on what we believe, what we think, and then we say something. And if we're all hearing something different, of course we're going to say something different than the other person, because we didn't hear the same thing, even though somebody said the same thing, right? So this is how we duplicate the best players. We want to figure out, what did you hear? What did you hear? What did you hear? And if we can make sure everyone hears the same thing for every single objection, then now we all start responding the same way. If we hear variations of that objection, we know that it's gonna be the same thing we heard and we're gonna respond the same way. That's how we duplicate the best players on a team. We make sure we're all on the same page of like, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Best Player, what did you hear? Okay, everybody else, let's start hearing that because they're getting the best positive reaction. This is how I'm able to duplicate 8 players on teams. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't need to know anything about anything. I just need to understand people. Okay, and that's how you're gonna be able to do that when you join a team. That's also a hack when you're on a team, right? Just ask people, what did you hear when they said that? And they're gonna tell you. You're gonna be like, damn, that's why you came up with that dope ass line? I was wondering how you came up with that. You're really not that slick. We're just hearing different things. So, okay. Does that all make sense so far?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Anyone having fun yet?
Yeah.
It's kind of cool, huh?
Yeah.
So, this is why I don't teach tactical stuff. Tactical stuff is dope. It definitely makes me feel pretty hyped when I hear it, but it's not universally applicable. If I were to tell you how to handle and use tactical advice on a product I've never sold, would you trust me?
No.
Hell no. Are you kidding me? I was like, so that's why I like to just know nothing and just, lean on the best players. So now we're gonna go over objections, which is the fun part, right? Let's actually, because we had this brought up a couple times, see, we're flying through this. Big sales training is fun again.
Yeah.
Big sales training great again. So let's go into a couple objections. We'll do one on this side of the room, one on this side of the room. So what do we hear the most?
We got it under control.
We got it under control. Okay, you got it under control. And what is one on the other side of the room?
I already have it. Oh wait, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say that's more than what I'm willing to pay right now.
Oh my God, that is all the time in the insurance. Oh my God. We train a lot of insurance people to come into the industry that we train in the learning space, and like they tell us they always hear that. So that's more than I'm willing to bet. Then I'm willing to
Every
bet.
day.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But I don't know what I'm paying for right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've been on the other end of that line. Okay, cool. So these are the two that we're here. Let's just focus on these two. There's a lot more, but here's what I want to do. So there's 3 things when you hear somebody say something like this, and we all kind of chalk it up under the umbrella of objection. But there's 3 things you look for under that umbrella, and it's actually smokescreen. Sure, you've heard that term, right?
Mhm.
There's objection, which we understand what that is, but we're going to define it in a sec. And there's complaint, right? So is anyone familiar with the term complaint?
Yeah.
Okay, how would you define complaint?
A complaint is like something that they just like bring up that could be perceived as an objection, but it's really just like, it doesn't mean anything.
There's
It's
nothing-
not in the way.
There's nothing that's objectively in the way of getting a sale done.
That is a very both very good. I think he said it better. No, I'm kidding.
We'll give it to him.
We'll give it to him. But that's really good, exactly. It's like, hey, I don't know if I can go hang out today. It's hot outside.
Exactly.
Okay, well then dude, wear less clothes. Let's go hang out. Now let's get into what's a smoke screen.
It's like, well, somebody else can
Let me
answer.
talk.
Yeah,
Let me
we'll
talk
go.
to my wife.
But what is a smoke screen? How would you define a smoke screen?
An excuse of why they
Yeah.
can't.
Would you define it the same way?
Mhm.
Okay, cool. Exactly. So I can't go hang out today. I gotta watch reruns of Cops. Okay. So let's go into objection. Right? How many of your friends say that? Probably all of them, right? But what's in the? How would you define objection? Let's go over here. I feel like you're escaping away. I see you though.
How would I define objection?
Yeah. Because it's not smoke screen and it's not complaint.
just an absolute rejection of what you're getting.
I would say definitely close to that. Would anyone else wanna add to that? How would you define objection?
A reason they can't or won't.
Nice, can't or won't, yeah. So, just truly logistical, right? An objection is truly logistical. I can't go outside today because I have no clothes, okay? Yeah, walk outside naked, probably gonna get into trouble, right? That's a true objection, it's a logistical issue, you have no clothes, it doesn't matter what the temperature is, you're going to jail, right? It's a problem. So now we gotta get you clothes, right? See the difference between objection, smoke screen, complaint, using that same example. So, the reason I brought that up is because when we hear things, we have to address them differently. So let's go into this example. We got it under control, okay? So what would we say this is? Complaint, smoke screen, or objection?
Objection?
Smoke screen.
Smoke screen?
Yeah.
Other side of the room? Okay, smoke screen. So we all believe it's smoke screen? Okay, so yes, it is smoke screen. Why is it smoke screen?
They don't have it under control.
Alright. And why is that? Why do you think that?
I mean, they're, whether they're embarrassed of the situation or they're not willing to talk to a stranger about what's going on, like, you know, in foreclosures case, like they don't necessarily want somebody they don't know talking about their finances.
Just trying to push you away.
Okay.
Get you out of there quicker.
TV, computer? Why do you think?
We'll see.
Well, maybe not. Okay. Why would you guys say smoke screen as well?
I'm listening.
We'll move on here. So yeah, this is smoke screen. If it was complaint, it would sound differently, right? Because remember, complaint is gonna be just saying like, it's too hot outside. Like, it's just making an observation, but it doesn't mean anything, just an opinion. So, we got it under control. What would make that a complaint? Anybody know? Examples?
Be like,
Make
A
that
complaint.
phrase a complaint?
a complaint would be like, it's gonna be hard to move, you know, like that's.
Yeah, is it
So
that?
what?
Exactly,
You know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly,
sucks.
so what? Exactly,
Uh-huh.
right. And that's how you would respond to a complaint. And so let's fast forward now, because that's exactly what we're about to just talk about, is anytime that we hear something and we define it, because that's the first thing I gotta do. What did I hear? How am I bucketing what I hear? Okay, so if I hear that it is a complaint, I'm going to respond differently, because what I heard helped me determine what the label is. So I heard, we got it under control, I know it's not a complaint or an objection, because an objection would be, no, I need X, maybe I need X amount of dollars if I sell this way I don't go negative on the sale. Maybe that's a legitimate objection,
Yeah.
right? So at that point, that becomes logistical. So now we just have to, and I love logistical stuff because then all you're working out is numbers. That's the easiest freaking thing to close, right? But once we bucket it into one of these specific labels, now we just will always know what to say. We don't even need a specific line. So this is how you can go through life and not just in a sales call and to be able to know, what did I hear? How do I bucket it? And then based on that, I'll already know how to respond. I don't need to know specific lines. So
So you're
that's,
saying instead of just like basing everything as an objection, base them off those 3 different ones and figure out how to respond to.
yeah, because imagine this. So earlier you said, okay, so what? Do it anyway.
Mhm.
What if somebody said, we got it under control? So what? Doesn't sound the same. Right?
Yeah.
So
You'd be like,
Yeah, exactly. Or it's like, hey, dude, I got no clothes at all. I can't go outside. So what? Do it anyway. It's like, doesn't work. So you can see the difference, right? So that's why it's important to know, what are you hearing? Which we can now talk to whoever's leading in those, dealing with those specific objection and has the best conversion rate. I wanna ask that person, what are you hearing? Not how do you respond? What did you hear? Let's all hear things that way. What did you bucket it under? And now just always know how to respond. So let's go to this one. That's more than I'm willing to pay. Smoke screen, objection, complaint.
Objection.
Objection, objection. We all think objection? Wow, it's interesting. Why do we think it was objection? We'll go here, here, and here.
You may just not have the money to be able to pay for it.
Okay, I like that.
I mean, I guess, you know, it could just be more than they can pay.
Could be more than
It
they
it
could
could
pay.
be a complaint.
Could be a complaint, could be more than they could pay. What are we thinking over here?
Maybe they just don't want to like switch or something either. Like
Maybe they don't wanna
do
switch.
insurance.
Maybe they wanna switch, right? But do you see how all these sound different? We don't know, but even these 2 tables right here, both chalked it up to possibly a money thing. So at that point, if it's a money thing, what would that actually make it? That would make it an objection.
Mhm.
So if we don't know for sure it's a money thing, what does that make this? Smoke screen.
Smoke screen.
Yeah. So, smoke screen. So you see how that works? We all heard the wrong thing. Crazy, huh? Like, we all thought we knew what we heard, And then after we actually dissected it, we were like, oh yeah, I don't know if it's a money thing. That makes
It
sense.
doesn't mean they don't have the money.
Doesn't mean they don't have
Don't
it.
spend the money, they have no enough value to justify their cost.
There's a lot of ambiguity in the.
Yeah, you have
in
to
the
ask clarifying
response.
questions.
Yeah, and insurance is, it's a lot harder because everyone kind of does the same thing. It's kind of more of a relationship type sale. It's a little bit harder sometimes. But a question I like to ask when you do find out to see, is this smoke screen truly a smoke screen or a legitimate objection, right? Logistics. I like to say, okay, is that because you don't have it available in the vaults, or do you just feel uncomfortable with spending it? Because if you ask that question, I have a lot of go-tos when I hear certain things. But when you ask that question, you're gonna know, they say, yeah, man, I just don't really feel comfortable spending that kind of money right now. Smoke screen, okay, something happened, we gotta break that down, unpack it, it's the term referred to as chunking down. And then we wanna be able to see what's stopping them from feeling that way. But if they say like, yeah, dude, I just don't have that logistical, now it's actually a money thing. So now we have to have a money conversation, right? Where it's like, do you just not have it now and you'll have it later? Do you wanna finance the deal? Do you wanna be able to bring in another partner? Like, how do we wanna find the money? Now it becomes a logistical issue of problem solving. But if it's not a problem solving thing, it's a shifting limiting belief thing. People think a certain way based off of biases they've acquired over time. So what we have, because everyone's different, right? Like we could have one person come in and say the exact same thing, or 10 people all say they want the exact same thing and all have different problems on why they can't do it. Because they all have different biases that accumulated over time. So what we have to do is figure out what those things are, make them non-issues, or shift the belief. And then we can go back in for the sale, because if they've shifted the belief and it's a non-issue now, what stops them from buying? Nothing, right? So that's how it works. Pretty cool exercise, huh?
That's pretty cool.
That's not bad, that's a nice little magic trick there. Alright.
I love it.
Okay, I'm kind of glad I brought that guy in there. Cool, so that's all we're gonna do here. These are the two magic tricks, okay? This is all the stuff when it comes to active listening that we really wanna nail down. And if you guys can do this together as a team, then you're gonna notice that your conversion rates will go up. Because now it's not a matter of like, who's naturally good at sales. That's not a real thing. Being naturally good at sales means that as you grew up, you were taught to hear things differently, or were taught to do things differently because of your environment. So you're not naturally good at anything. You were groomed up to hear things differently. That's why you respond differently. That's a coachable skill. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna get into is intrinsic exercises. So remember I said two things. There's only two things that will dictate how good you get at sales, in my opinion, right? And this is without me teaching tactical information. You can see why tactical isn't as valuable as conceptual, like what we're teaching today. So first thing was active listening. And how do you actively get better at active listening? I showed you a couple ways to do that. Okay, the next thing is gonna be behavioral, okay? We're gonna pretend I spelled that right. So behavioral, close enough, right? All right, so behavioral, we're gonna look at a few different things. This is gonna be how you operate yourself, okay? Because nothing exists without you, right? If you didn't exist, how much would you get done? Very little, right? And if you know that all of your, and this is gonna sound really rhetorical, but you'd be surprised how many people don't think this way, right? How good are your efforts if you're tired? Probably not as good as when you're rested. I know that sounds so silly, right? But a lot of people don't treat themselves in a way to produce a great outcome, but then get frustrated if they're not producing a better outcome. That makes sense? So that sounds so ridiculously obvious, but if it was so obvious, why don't we do it? That becomes the next train of thought. Well, then it's because I don't care. Well, then that tells me a lot about you, because you don't want to be good. You're just full of crap, right? Or you legit didn't know, and you're just telling me you know, which means you have a big ego. But it can only be one of those two things, in my opinion. Could it be anything else, you guys think?
The person's committed, they'll figure it out.
Exactly. But if they're not doing it, then would you agree that they're probably not a committed person? That's all it is, right? So if we can control these things, we can control outcomes more often. But a lot of the time, we don't know where the hell we're going. Remember earlier, I wish I would have took a picture of it, that's my bad, but what we wrote down earlier and why we're doing these things, we don't know what they mean. So all those things that we wrote down weren't, are you guys familiar with the term quantified? Okay, you're adding like a number to something, so it has a value. So we didn't quantify any of those things. For example, we brought up objections. If I were to ask you, what makes somebody good at objections? Could you give me some type of quantified variable? Meaning like, could you attach a value to knowing when somebody's good at objections? Or is it just saying like, they just overcome shit? Somebody says something to them, they got a rebuttal ready to go.
They set more appointments.
Okay, how many more?
The ratio on how many they get,
And
how
what's that
much of an
percentage?
activity.
What's that percentage? Do you see what I'm saying though?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's not quantified, so it's all arbitrary. And that's what drives us fucking crazy as people, is that when people say like, I wanna make a lot of money, Okay, well, they're never gonna make it, because it doesn't matter how much they make, they've never made it, they've also already made it.
Cause there's no stick.
Exactly. There's no attached variable, it's not quantified. That's why we go crazy as humans, and that's why people that don't have a quantified metric around these things are always unhappy, because they've never hit a goal, they're chasing a black hole. So, what we wanna do, kinda cool, right? So this stuff isn't talked about a lot in sales training, because, this part is kind of boring. But I think that you'll get a lot out of this, and I think that, you'll just love it. So an identity map is something I'll send over to you if you wanna send it to the team.
Yeah, great.
So an identity map is gonna be something that is gonna be very similar to a vision board. Here's why I don't like vision boards, because it's a bunch of pictures that are, again, arbitrary. People put them up on a billboard on a bulletin, and they like to say to themselves, like, I wanna get something like that. It's like, okay, cool, to what extent and when? They're just like, manifestation, bitch. Like, that's what they say, something like that. And that's what makes manifestation woo-woo. In my mind, manifestation is not woo-woo, it's a verb, it's an action. Because when you learn how to quantify and reverse engineer what you want out of life, it then becomes a series of actions that create a series of outputs that then create some type of result. And then based on how much of that result you get, will determine how fast you get the vision board. The more you talk about things that you want in life, have you guys ever heard like the laws of the universe? Manifestation? That stuff's only real when you act it into existence. Okay, so when you talk about stuff, people hear it. When people hear it, they do a couple things. They either think, that dude's fucking crazy, forget that dude, don't go near that dude, right? Or they're gonna say like, I like that guy. Let me go send him some people that I think would help him. Or they're gonna say, let me be a part of that. One of those three things usually happens when you speak this stuff into the universe. It's not manifestation, it's a verb, right? You have to do these things actively. So the identity map is going to be your vision board, which is all things you want on there, which is going to be broken down by categories of life. It's gonna be like fitness, family, finance, spiritual, education, goals, etc., etc., etc. Okay? Next thing you're gonna want on there is going to be, I'm gonna send this to you, so if you wanna send it to the office here, but it's going to be 3 different paragraphs characterized as who I am, who I was, who I'm going to be, right? So it's characterized specifically. It's very important that it's specific. So for example, if I said, I wanna buy an amazing house, that's one of my goals. Like, okay, cool, well dude, I got this shed in the backyard, bro. Like, I'm about to make your world. And they're like, no, that's not what I meant. I'm like, you don't even know what you meant. Right? So that's why intentional questions get intentional answers in a sales call. The more intentional the question, the more intentional the answer. And then same thing in your life. The more intentional you are with the things you say to yourself, the more intentional your actions become to acquire. So for example, I want to buy a nice house. Let me go sell some shit. Okay, great. I don't know how much the house costs, I just see a picture. So my degree of action is also going to be all over the place. But if I know, now let's talk about quantifying. If I know on the vision board that my house is $1 million, and I know that I have to put down $200,000, and I want to do that in a year, well, that would mean I have to save like $18,000 a month, right? If I want to do it in a year, I got taxes, I got food, I got this thing, that thing, and the other thing. That means that overall, I add all those things up, I would have to make like $40,000 a month, or 50, or whatever the number is, right? So now you're like, okay, you're either going to put in the exact amount of action because a phone call based on a conversion rate leads to an appointment. Then you got a show percentage of how many of those people actually keep the appointment. Then you've got a conversion rate when you show up to the appointment on how many close. Then you've got an average cash collected on what you close the deal for, which determines your percentage of commission. That's your number. When you back all those things up, all reverse engineering, you know exactly how much action you have to do to make $50,000 a year to get that house in 1 year. A month, right. How much you have to do a month to get that house in a year.
Yeah.
See how that works? So that's why when people say, these are my goals, I'm like, fuck yeah, you must be a really hard worker. Like, you must really know what you're doing. Because that means you make what, 200 grand a month? Because you want to go buy all those things in a year? They're like, no. I'm like, okay, stop lying to yourself, fix this, and you can actually get what you want, right? A lot of people are like delusional in that way, and they don't want to be real with themselves. It's kind of like girl math. It's like that. And I saw a really funny reel, they're like, yeah, but when real math doesn't work, that's why we girl math. I'm like, okay, cool, that doesn't make real math not real. Okay, so we got to math it out. So that leads us to our next thing. Oh, sorry, the last thing on here after you do those 3 paragraphs is also going to be your values, because we make all of our decisions based from our core values. And the thing underneath that is going to be principles. So I add to that list, so when I send this over to you, man, like you send it to the office, like you're gonna notice that I have like a long list. Cause every time I hear something that resonates with me, whether a parable or a concept or a quote, I put it on there. I like to read this thing every morning, right? I just glance through it. Because the things you do in life or culture is not developed by doing one thing great once, it's developed by doing great things consistently over a long period of time. That's how it becomes a part of your identity. That's why it's an identity map, right? Because we're you're gathering this now, right? We're reverse engineering all of our behaviors to acquire the future version of ourselves that's on the vision board. That's why it's a map to your best identity. Making sense now? Puzzle pieces. Okay, goals. Any questions so far? No?
It's very clear.
Good, pretty good, right? The reason why we do the identity map, because you guys are probably like, okay, this is great, but why are we talking about this? This is a sales training. It's because we talked about at the very beginning of this, how sales is a roller coaster. The only way you can stay out of bad ruts is if you can look back at something and remember your why. And people talk about this a lot. They're like, well, you need a purpose. Well, you gotta know your why. But nobody helps you like really understand that. It's kind of like saying, we need team culture. And it's like, okay, great. What is that? What does it look like? What are we doing? But nobody can really describe it. Because people that don't really understand culture, the same way people that don't understand purpose or understand why, they can't articulate it, right? So because people typically can't articulate it, that's why I created this identity map. Because as you write everything down and the things that matter to you and who you're gonna become in detail, you then created your purpose. You then created your why. And then from there, every time you have a rut, you pull this thing up and you remember, this is why I'm doing it. That's your fallback. The goals is kind of like we just talked about. So when we quantify everything, this is something that we can't really do in the room right now, just for the sake of time. But I'd love to see you guys do the exercise to do for yourself. Every time we do this with, because we have a sales school, it's like a part of the sales agency. So we take people through a sales school. That's not what any of you guys are gonna buy today, but the sales school, that's a part of our first week process. We have everybody go through this and then they create a 3-year goal. And then within the 3-year goal, they list out everything they want by a year. And then I have them look at, okay, based on those things, how much action would it take to acquire that in a year? And then they start to realize, oh, not that much, right? Because they split up into 3 years. After they realize that, I'm like, okay, what would stop you from pursuing your best self diligently for 1 year? Are you worth that? And then most people rhetorically say yes, right? Because they want to say, no, I'm not worth that. But then that's the position I want to put people in. That's how I phrase my questions, right? Because it puts people in a position to have to admit who they are. And I'm fine with whoever people are, as long as they're willing to admit it, right? Because then it's like, okay, cool, I'm not here to change anyone. I'm here to help you get to where you want to go. Same thing when we help a business owner or a sales rep. I don't care what your potential of your vehicle is, being your business or being your sales skill. My job is to figure out where you want to go and to help you get there. It doesn't matter how much I think you could be making. It does not matter how much I think your business could be doing. That's not up to me. My goal is to help you use this vehicle to acquire your destination. That's it. And I used to think in my early years as being a sales trainer, when I was in my young 20s, training these teams that were in their young 20s, was that you're amazing, I'm gonna make you amazing, you're gonna be me, we're all gonna be great, we're gonna make so much money together. Energy drink, right? That's what it was like when I was 22. And then I started realizing, and everybody that wanted to quit because they weren't made for sales and our managers made a wrong hire, I used to convince them to stay. I would sell them into staying in sales, and they would be super unhappy. And my manager used to be like, coach up or coach out. Don't ever force people to be something they don't want to be. Just help them become who they want to be. And that was it. I was like, oh, okay. All right, so not everybody's meant to be awesome. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Right? Everything's fine. So I had to learn that lesson the hard way. So the reason you do this is because after you figure out your 3-year goals and you realize, okay, it doesn't take a lot of action to acquire that in 3 years. I'm worth being diligent for a year. I'm gonna consolidate. I'm gonna do all those 3 things in 1 year. Because now I've done my identity map and I know how much, because I quantified it, right? I know how much I need to make in a year or in 3 years to acquire that. I can do that amount of action in a year. I can do it, right? So now I'm gonna make that my 1-year goal. So now let me reevaluate this. Now who do you become in 3 years?
Superman.
Superman. It gets crazy at that point. And so I used to say these things to myself, and like, I don't really like to name drop and stuff, but when we do talk about the Jordan Belfort interview, we talk about the Brad Lee thing, we talk about speaking on the big stages with the people I've spoken with. And when I was younger, I was like, this is gonna happen. When that movie first came out, the Wolf of Wall Street, whatever, I was young. I was actually in gym sales, and I was like, I'm going to meet him, I'm going to be that, can't tell me otherwise. And I was living in a tiny little like 600 square foot shack of a house, right? And it was like one of those houses that look like should be mobile homes, but they're also not worth enough to move. So they're just kind of there. I'm sure you guys, you probably do a lot of those deals. Yeah, I lived in one of those. I think my rent was like $400 a month or something. But I was in that house with a child and my girlfriend at the time. And like, that's where we lived. And I was like, but I'm gonna be that, right? And then years down the road, I go to Jordan's house. My mentor at the gym actually went to prison with his business partner, Donnie Adolph, or however you say his name. And then also, who's the guy that played Matthew McConaughey? Can't remember his name in the movie. Yeah, who he played in that movie. That guy ends up opting into our apps while I'm out in Beverly Hills to meet Jordan in the same week. And I was like, bro, that's when the universe is speaking to you. Whatever you guys believe is what you believe. That's what I believe is the universe is like, dude, it's giving you a sign you're on the right track. What are the odds, right? And then, so that's why you have to do this now, because what you believe you are today is not enough. You have to believe you are the person of the future, because then you'll start acting as that person. Next is gonna be, are we good on this? Any questions on how to, this is the last thing, I think it's the last, actually there were 4 things. Nope. Yeah, so there's 2 more things. We're gonna do this and then behaviors, and that'll be at the end of the day.
Oh, well.
Kind of flew by that. Has it been an hour?
It's already been an hour.
Hey, I timed this thing perfect. Okay, so time blocking. This kills sales reps, kills business owners, kills everyone, right? Everybody. So time blocking. This is usually what I like to do is an exercise where I like to pull up calendars. We're not going to do that here right now for the sake of time. But if you were to pull up your calendar, I'll even show you guys some. I'll pull up my calendar. So what I want to show you here is, this is my calendar. You guys can see this.
Looks like my calendar.
Yeah, so you see how it's all time blocked? Look at this, next week, week after that, same thing, right? Week after that, same thing. And it's like, your calendar needs to be your Bible. If you don't respect your time, you need to be okay with other people not respecting you either. That's the trade-off. So if you feel like, oh, I can't believe that person was this, or I can't believe that this thing happened, it's like, bro, you asked for it. And most people don't realize you're indirectly asking for it because most people don't have the right people in their life to hold them to that standard. And so sometimes you have to hold yourself to that standard, right? So it starts with just doing it, right? That's the first step. You always gotta take action, right? You gotta get frequent at something before you get good. A lot of people wanna be good first before they're frequent, and it doesn't work. So just start doing it and map out the things that you need to get done. Typically I like to have higher IQ situation stuff done in the morning. And I always like to make sure you have an hour block every day to handle personal tasks. And then within those time blocks, you should have things in the description of the time block that gets done. There's a lot of time you just put personal tasks, and you're just like, I don't know what those things, what do I have to do today? Like, that's what happens. And then the time block becomes worthless, because you get nothing done. And so everything has to be listed out. At the end of every week, you should always be mapping out the following week. And you should know, here are the things I have to get done this week. And then you have to delegate those things out, or separate them throughout the week. Because you can't just say, I gotta do 10 things this week, I'll do them all Monday, I'll have nothing to do the rest of the week, be nice. It's like, but you only have time to do one of those things. And now, because you put all 10 things on the calendar, even though you got something done, you feel like you lost when you just didn't organize correctly.
Mhm.
Right? So when you start doing that, it affects your headspace, because then you feel like you're constantly losing when you're in the environment of winning. And then so you start telling yourself, I'm a loser. And then you start operating everything else in your life as that. And so this thing could help you or it could hurt you. And then if it does not help you, you start to devalue it. So you just stop doing it altogether. But this can literally set you free. Discipline is not easy, but it will set you free. So time blocking is one of those things you gotta do. Last thing we're gonna go over is behaviors, and that'll be the end of the day. So, are you guys glad you hung out?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So there you go. This is actually one of my favorite parts too of this. And you'll notice this whole sales training didn't have one single tactical thing that I told you guys to do.
This is fun.
Incredible. Isn't that kind of wild? You're like, when we talked about it, you're like, I don't understand what you mean. I don't know how you're gonna teach us sales. I'm teaching us sales everything. And I was telling some of my friends, I was like, oh dude, you had to hear it. It was a great conversation. He was like, all right, you better just not fuck up. So, all right. No, he didn't say that.
Like, let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
Why not?
Why not? I spelled that wrong again. We're gonna pretend that's not. So let me go back to this sheet. There's only 5 last things we're gonna cover under this. So these last things are behavioral. There's something called, is anyone familiar with nonverbal cues?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Cool. I was like, it's a room full of sales reps. God damn it. Okay, so verbal cues are word tracks. That's what you say, and understanding why you say it. Non-verbal cues is going to be how it's delivered, tone, cadence, body language. Okay, so a lot of that is going to be dictated by how you view yourself, right? Because the way you hold yourself is based on how you view yourself. The way you speak about things is based on the power and degree of your beliefs. That's where conviction comes from. All these things we're going to go over right now is how you view yourself, which is, again, if you were to go backwards, how much you respect yourself, the time blocking, how disciplined you are, the identity map, because that's also going to have all the actions you can do. How committed are you to those actions, right? So all of those things make up the human, and the human projects what I believe it is. So those things we're going to cover right now are going to be emotional regulation. So everything that people do is normal for them, and it should be indifferent to us. Okay, that's how you have to see it. So we're in a sales call. How many times as a prospect says something, and you're just like, that was dumb, and like you want to scream it, and you're just like, how do you not know that? I was like, 1 + 1 is 2. Are you crazy? And so you're thinking this stuff to yourself, right? And how do you emotionally regulate to know that what you just heard is normal to them based on who they are, their biases, all the stuff that they've accumulated over their life, and indifferent to me? Because to me, it's just new information, right? To them, they're freaking out, right? They're like, you're gonna offer me how much money? I'm gonna lose $20,000 on that deal. And you're over here thinking like, dude, you're not gonna get anything more than that for it. Like you're trying to express that to them, but you have to keep your cool. Because if you don't, and you get defensive, they're not gonna do business with you, right? Hello?
Hello.
Same thing with insurance, right? You're like, I swear to you, it's a better deal.
Yeah,
You got a bundle. So you gotta figure it out.
Minimum is not your friend.
Yeah. So the goal here is how can we emotionally regulate, right? And these things I'm gonna cover right now are not just practiced in the sales field. So I like to view sales as the arena, and then everything we do off the field is the practice for us to execute in the arena. It's just like any sport. If anyone here is an athlete, or is currently an athlete, then you know that this is stuff you do off the field, right? It's the food that makes you ripped. It's not the workouts. Like it's that sort of concept, right? So next is going to be vocal authority, status. Okay, the way somebody sees you will also dictate if they respect you. If they respect you, that'll also increase the likelihood they want to do business with you versus the other guy, even if the other guy has, or other gal has a better price, or they have got a more reputable company, whatever. So the goal is we need to create status with ourselves. And that comes from knowing if you believe that they should be talking to you, right? That's usually the big miss is, oh, why would they buy from us when that person just talked to them? I was like, dude, I would buy from that person over me. And if you think that, it's sales gone. Right, so something that I used to hear in my early years in getting into the sales training space, specifically use that example, 2017, 18, whatever. People would say, dude, that person, I remember Dean, like Tony Robbins' right-hand guy, he hit me up and we did like this affiliate thing, 2018. My friends were like, oh my God, who's in your DMs? There's no way. I was like, dude, he has no idea who he's talking to because I'm going to be that. I was like, he's gonna get to tell this story later, that he knew me when, and then we became friends, right? That's the story that's gonna be told. And I had to tell myself that before it was real. Because again, identity map, right? See how it all goes back to who you are? Because the way I operate is in my future self, not my current self. So, because more times than not when I was selling, I was typically broke. And like, I don't know if anyone's ever experienced that in life, but like honestly, most sales reps, to be real, the best sales rep I've ever met, it was like that. And it's like, I'd be at Lifetime, like selling, all my money was going to alcohol and nice suits, partying and nice suits. I showed up looking nice though, right? And but I had no money. Remember you guys told me the story. I was living in that tiny little place. I was making over $100,000 a year, but I was living in there. And I had no money. That was wild. And so, but I never operated from that place. I always operated from the place of I'm a fucking millionaire. I know you're a millionaire. Let's do something together, right? That was always my mindset. Next is presence. Okay, so. Just to recap so far, we've gone over emotional regulation, vocal authority, which is how you speak based on status. Now it's presence. So how you show up. That doesn't necessarily just mean showing up on time. How you show up is the posture, right? It's like the way you dress or whatever it is. It's like, I used to think in my early years of sales, and this hurt my status, was that you had a title, you were a VP, you were an owner, you were this thing, that thing. I'm just a lonely low-level sales rep. So you should definitely tell me what to do. That's what I used to think. And so it's when I changed, and I used to wear suits, I used to try to get certain haircuts because I was the youngest guy on the team when I got coached to sell B2B at the Yellow Pages. And so I figured I had to have a certain haircut, I had to wear a certain type of outfit, like this thing and that thing. And it wasn't until I started realizing that how I show up has nothing to do with my clothes. Hence why I dress like this all the time. I'm always in a Hawaiian shirt. It's kind of like my brand, how people see me. And so that's because I show up with confidence, because I know that I've got something that you need. I got something that will help you. You don't have to believe it now, just hear me out, right? Kind of like you guys all walking into this room. You're just like, what the hell is this? What is that shirt? So, does he know it's 60 degrees outside? All right, next is gonna be conviction. So conviction is how hard do you believe, okay? So that's gonna be conviction. And is that belief proactive or reactive? So how hard you believe in something will determine if you show up and as if you had a family member that had cancer and you're like, I don't care that you're taking a third mortgage out on your house, I don't care that you do this thing and that thing, you're getting this treatment. All right, that's believing so hard that you'll do anything for somebody. Do you believe in your product that hard? Or do you only believe in your product that hard when it benefits you? That's the proactive reactive, right? I'm constantly proactive in my beliefs around things because in any situation I'm armed to be able to be like, no, this is what it is. Sometimes it's not right? But my belief in something is so deep that I'm just like, they used to joke when I was selling my early days, they'd be like, yeah, Rob doesn't have the answer, you're just gonna confuse them, they'll probably buy it. And I was like, it's because I believe it, and then there's reactive belief, where it's just when it benefits you. So it's like, I don't really believe, I'll sell it if I have to, and it's like, do people hear that? And then if you say that enough times, because remember, we lose more sales than we make, right? Our show rates might be, in our industry, in this industry of e-learning, it's like 50-60% show rates. That means we're losing 40% of our shows. And then we're only closing maybe 30-40% of the deals. So we're losing, 50+% of the deals. That's a lot of lost deals if you really chalk it up. It doesn't matter how much commission you made, it doesn't matter how much money the business made, you lost a lot of deals. And so if you're only reactive, that means you're telling yourself more times than not that you don't believe in something. And our belief comes from, we talked about this earlier with culture, right? It's not something great said once. It's something great said over and over and over again for an extended amount of time, an unreasonably long amount of time. So if you do not talk to yourself correctly and talk to yourself the right way, you're gonna start believing the things you tell yourself. That's gonna affect your conviction. Last but not least is curiosity. So will you forever remain inquisitive? Society has taught us not to. Society has taught us to not ask questions that'll make you look dumb. All right, society has taught us that we always have to have an ego because you're great, right? Or we convince ourselves of that. But if you're constantly inquisitive, then when you learn how to, we talked about this earlier about buckets, like when you constantly are focused on the framework of what did I hear, what bucket is it labeled in, let me ask some questions. Okay, that's being inquisitive. I'm constantly wondering, what did you mean by that? How do you define that? Who told you that? All right, these are things that I'm constantly wanting to know. Those are actually questions I ask in sales calls. And I do have one more thing I wanted to cover, and I'm gonna do it out of order, and I'm pissed it's out of order. That's okay. It's offer positioning, because I know that part's important. And then we'll be done here. Does anyone have any questions about behavioral stuff? So that's 70% of the sale before I get into offer positioning. Because nonverbal is 70% of the sale. People are watching you before they're hearing you, right? So sight is faster than sound. So the tone, cadence, body language, that's all processing into the subconscious before they listen to the words. So what they see is gonna affect the deal, doesn't matter what you say. Also, if you don't close the deal in a one-call close, they're going to remember the last thing you made them feel rather than the last thing that they remember hearing. So sales to the transfer of emotion. Okay, last thing, this is one of my favorite things to talk about, offer positioning. I think everything's my favorite thing to talk about. Should probably change that line. But no, you're my favorite. So offer positioning, and you're wondering, as we said earlier, how can you teach offer positioning if you never sold our stuff? And I'm gonna show you how. Another magic trick. I forgot this is the third magic trick. I had to have three. So the third magic trick is gonna be the frisbee in the park. And the way I position an offer is using the analogy frisbee in the park. So I'm gonna put this down so you know I'm legit actually done. But the frisbee in the park is that if I have something, for example, you guys have a lot of different add-ons. I'm sure you guys have more than one service or just wholesaling. And so when you look at this and you're at the point of the sales call where you are positioning the solution, what most sales reps do is feature dump because they believe that if I tell them everything I have, that'll increase the value. That's the logic. And it's not that that logic doesn't make sense. It's that it doesn't apply to this because people don't prioritize the things you do. We talked about that at the very beginning, right? when we dropped everything on the board. So what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna give you the analogy. If I went to the park and I was there to play Frisbee with my homies at the park, they're like, hey Rob, can you go get the Frisbee out of the trunk? I'm like, hell yeah, dude. I got a bowling ball, an oven mat, a baseball in there too, a golf club. You want to get those too? They're gonna be like, are you feeling all right? We're here to play Frisbee. You know that, right? There's dogs here. And that's how most people sell. They're like, hold on a second. You're telling me you don't want me to go get a baseball bat to play Frisbee? Are you sure? And like, but will you pay me more if I do? They're like, no, the baseball bat has nothing to do with what I want. And so what ends up actually happening in a sales call, when you pitch all the features all at once without building and positioning the correct value and discovery, which we don't have time to go over today, but what ends up happening is they devalue the product now. And they start asking things like, well, how much would it be if we didn't include X? And that's when you start hearing things like that. And so our goal is in a sales call, which we don't have time to go over the 7 stages, but you're gonna have introduction, you're gonna have the discovery, which is the meat and bones of the ammunition that you collect. You're gonna have a diagnosis, which is going to be the remedy that you're going to propose for what you uncovered in discovery. And then you're going to have a temp check, which is gonna make sure that we got all the shit on the table and there's no more limiting beliefs, make sure that they're up there on the 8 to 10 range. And then we're gonna go into the offer. And in the offer, we're only going to position deliverables that we have, or the stuff in our trunk. We're only gonna position the stuff that accommodates the diagnosis. And then at the end, they're on the fence. What can I do to get them to buy? They wanna buy. Could I discount it? I don't have the option. How do I get them to buy? I could add more value. What value do I have to add? Wait a second. I just realized I got other stuff in the trunk. So now you put yourself in a position to where you can now increase the value of what they get by now proposing they could use the other stuff in the trunk as if it was an add-on, but they actually are gonna get it anyway. See how that works? So it's gonna help them get the result faster. And they're gonna value it more now because they're like, oh dude, I was already gonna pay this. You're gonna give me that for free to help me get there faster without any extra fee? Yeah, I'd be down for that. That makes sense. See how that works? Frisbee in the park. So that's all we got. That's it. So,
Great, thank you.
yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, you guys could add me on Facebook, ask me questions on there if you want to. It's Rob Quinn, ROBBQUINN. Was that good for you guys over here?
Yeah, I'm good. I have a quick question for you.
Yeah, hit me.
So, like, right now, when we go to a sales appointment or get a hold of a customer, like, we kind of give them everything. So you said with the Frisbee in the park, should we only, like, keep all their options to help them get the foreclosure stopped in our pocket and then just ask the questions based off what they want to do and sort of lead them that way, or still go over all the options that we know of how to get it stopped? Does that make sense?
You only want to offer first the thing they want, or the thing that's going to help them the most. You never offer anything else, ever in a sale, ever, unless there's going to be friction and why they can't do it. And we know now how to bucket those things, right? Is it a complaint, at which point they don't need more? Is it a smoke screen, at which point is it a limiting belief you have to shift? Or is it a true logistical objection, at which point we do have to consider other options to make the money work?
Our main objective is to try to get them to say what they want.
Exactly.
And then work off that.
Yeah. But do you see how I don't have to be in your line of work to understand the buyer? The buyer's gonna tell you all the answers. All I'm gonna do is agree with them and be like, yeah, dude, you should do that. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna give them ownership of the idea. This is the term and why we're looking to coin this inception selling, is because people are telling me what they wanna hear, or people are telling me what they need. I'm agreeing with them and then giving them ownership of that idea as if the solution was their own. I say, yeah, you should do that. It's a good move.
How does that work when they don't know what they need or what they want?
'Cause
In our industry specifically, right?
Yeah.
Because the buyer wants to tell us what they want. They're like, oh, I just want state minimum liability. Okay, well, I know as the insurance expert, that's not gonna serve you when you need it. And it's not a tangible item that they're buying.
And so that's what you hear,
Got it,
right? So now that we know what we heard, how do we respond? Is it a smoke screen, objection, complaint?
okay.
See how that works?
Yeah, most of the time it's a smoke screen in that situation.
Right. So then that makes your mind go to think what? If they tell you they don't want they only want state coverage, they don't want all the things, you know it's a smoke screen, why is it a smoke screen? Where does your mind go next?
They don't know, they don't have enough knowledge of the product or the situations or
Could be.
or the outcome of how it's gonna affect them.
Okay, those are two things, anything else?
I mean, I guess budget could be in the
Yeah.
equation as well.
So it's those three things. So if I'm in your shoes, I'm asking that. You know, I'm curious, when you say that, is it a budget thing? Or is it a knowledge thing on knowing everything available? And maybe that's a little overwhelming, so you only wanna start here? Or is it whatever the third thing was? I'm asking that to the prospect.
Right.
They're gonna say, yeah, for real, it's a budget thing. Okay, cool. When you say budget thing, is it because you feel uncomfortable with spending that amount, or you just don't have it available? I gotta find out. Logistics smokescreen. Yeah, I feel uncomfortable spending it. Okay, cool. Is it because you spent this much before, or just, can you walk me through that? What makes you uncomfortable? I gotta figure out the baseline. If I can figure out what makes it uncomfortable, I turn that thing into a non-issue. Well, Mr. Prospect, knowing that's a non-issue, is there any reason why you can do this step? Do you see how I'm able to walk through that whole train of thought?
Mm-hmm.
This is why it's important to learn how to think, not just tactically what to say. Because that's what you're running into, that's your obstacle right now. Is you're trying to say if they say this, how can I be competitive with the other people? Or to help them know that that's not the best thing they need.
Yeah.
But they need to tell you why.
You don't even know what you're competing against.
I don't need to.
Mic drop.
Kind of crazy, huh?
Okay. I like it.
So, but are there any other questions actually? We can do a really short Q&A. We can even do a role play with your products and me actually applying this so you can see it in real time. Or any general questions either way. If not, that's all we'll do.
You guys want to role play a situation with them or something? Or have any questions?
Grant, you wanna do role play?
You want me to do it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do it.
Cool. Alright, let's see what it looks like. What, Grant?
Who am I?
Grant or Brett?
Grant.
Grant.
Why don't you do do you want him to be the buyer? So like in our case, we're trying to approach sellers, do you want him to be the buyer, the customer?
You could be the buyer, you could be the seller, or you could be the seller, and I'm trying to get you to sell.
Okay.
Right, so I don't know the logistics around
Sure.
the service. So the last time I did this, by the way, we were in a room of 42 business owners, we had a big event, and one of my business partners, oh you guys have to grab that. One of my business partners booked a bunch of sales calls for them, and I had one of those people book me the sales call. And what ended up happening is I had no idea what the product was. So I go through the conversation using these concepts, and I pause the phone and look over and be like, what does that term mean? And you tell me. I unpause it. So we have all that live footage and I advance that deal. So the only thing I didn't know was the product knowledge. But product knowledge is something that should come within a sales enablement resource guide with a team that you join, which is typically what you provide or what you guys would get joining a team. And then that's where you learn product knowledge. That's why that stuff doesn't really matter, right? Because that should just come as a sales enablement resource. Cool, all right, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Come into the arena. Okay, cool. We can even sit if you want to. Let's make this look really cool.
There you go.
Let's go, Grant.
Oh, hey, I forgot you guys were over there again. All right. So, I don't know how you guys open this. Let's pretend that we're already down to the end and we're talking about the price piece of it.
That's
Okay.
the easy part.
Okay, what part's the hard
So
part?
getting back door, we
Getting in the
approach,
door.
we, most of our business is people in foreclosure, we approach them and say, saw the bank was giving you some grief, want to go over some options to help you keep and stay in the home. And then as a backup option, we'll buy the house, or
Okay.
buy and rent it back to
Are you calling or knocking?
Knocking.
Knocking most
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so
So you don't
what,
know I'm coming.
yeah. I'm familiar with the door knocking. Yeah, we said that a lot. Yeah, okay, cool.
Great.
Grant, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Knock, knock.
Hello?
Dude, Grant, what's going on, man?
Who are you?
Yo, it's Rob.
Nice
What's
to
up?
meet you,
How you
Rob.
doing?
How can I
Yeah.
help you?
I mean, you didn't know I was gonna be here, but I will say this, love your home. Okay, I'm sure you get told that all the time. We're actually going around for different houses to be able to provide some pretty sick options and how we could be able to help you out, maybe do something even more creative with your home. Would you be open to hearing what that looks like?
Creative, what do you mean?
Oh man, there's so many different things. Hold on, I've only got 5 minutes. Are you good for 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And so what we're trying to do here is so booking an appointment, what's the objective? This would be booking an appointment, right? Because we're knocking the door. And we have to-
Yes.
So what's the objective?
The objective is to figure out where they are in the foreclosure process and try and get them to sell their home to us.
Not yet,
Not yet.
right? So to book, the first thing we want to talk about booking an appointment is to get the appointment. We're
Okay.
trying to sell the appointment, nothing else. And then in the appointment, we typically have criteria in order to actually try to make a sale. So let's start thinking about the door knocking phase as all I want to do is to get the trust of this person to let me in the home. If they do that, because what I used to tell people in Kirby is dude, all I got to do is typically my kid's mom at the time, my girlfriend at the time, she would knock the doors because they'll let a pretty little girl in the house and not some Mexican for wearing the same suit for 5 days in a row. And, but whenever I would knock, the whole goal was just to get in the home, and I'd say, hey, I get paid just to clean the spot and demo this thing, would you be open to just letting me make a paycheck? Because I knew once I got into the home, it's way more awkward for somebody to kick you out of their house than it is to kick you off their doorstep. Or to hang up the phone. So my objective was get the meeting, AKA get in the home, right? That was it. And so that needs to be how you guys look at door knocking. Gotta just get in the home. That's the
See,
first one.
the issue with ours is a lot of these people, they're in a lot of stress,
They don't
doing
exactly want
drugs,
us in the home.
house is, you know, just a complete mess, you know, so getting in the door already, they're just, I mean, a lot of times it's just the crack of the door talking through it, or.
So all those things you just said is what you hear
Mhm.
when you knock the door. Knowing you hear all those things, what could help you de-stress somebody?
Just making them feel comfortable and like you're there to help them at the end of the day, or.
And what are some things that make people feel comfortable?
I guess just like a confident, like outgoing person, just, you know, feeling like you care about them.
Yeah, people receive messages differently. I don't know if you guys have heard of love languages. There's like 5 different love languages. People receive like love differently. So if you could learn how to address people, if you don't know how to read love languages, like we have a whole training on that, but if you can't read that based on a person's like way they hold themselves, do all of them and see how somebody responds. Because if you see they respond to one thing more than another, like people that typically have really great handshakes, typically physical touch people, okay? People that will like smile or like put their arms down when you give them a compliment, you'll notice I stood up and hand shook. I also gave a compliment about your house, right? Affirmations is a big one.
Yeah.
There's some that you can't do, right? Like, but at the same time, you know, be selective. I'm a little out there, right? Because I'm kind of crazy like that. But like, you know, I'll be hugging people, strangers, right?
Yeah.
And so
We've done that.
and sometimes you just got it. And what I'm looking for when I do this is responses, right? It's
Yeah.
like when you feel out a conversation, you hear the term feel out. What you're looking for is how people respond to things you say. That's how you feel it out. It's not an intuition thing. It's like practice. So that's what you're looking for. You're just trying to get home.
Okay.
So, and you see how we walk through that train of thought? It's not what do I say, it's what am I hearing? And then when I hear that thing, what does that mean? That works. You'll come up with the right question when you learn how to think differently.
So just like testing different approaches and everything, just to kind of see how people react, like in a way as well.
Yeah, and then some of those things is the basics of love languages, right? I'm knocking a door, I'm being enthusiastic, right? Because people gotta wanna be around me, I'm shaking their hand really well, if they'll let me, right? Understand your surroundings, if someone's cracked out, I'm probably not gonna be like, bring it in, you know? I'm gonna be selective. And so, if I see they're distressed, I wanna calm them down, I wanna give them some compliments, I wanna help them feel like they're at home. Because then they'll probably feel less stressed. They probably got everyone around them stressing them out more, right? So what can I do to be something for you that nobody else will be? That's why I love sales calls. Is because in today's day, it's more transactional than ever. So if you can actively listen in a sale, you're doing more for that person than probably their entire circle of friends are. Because nobody really listens. They typically will be there and they'll be like something you're talking to, but not something that's they typically will bring up the thing they want to talk about after that. So they're not really listening. You're just talking, and there's somebody to talk to. You'd be just as good as putting a face painted on the wall, right? It'd be the same thing. So you can give them something nobody else will. You know, people are paying like $300 an hour for that. It's called therapy. You're giving it to them for free.
Oh, yeah.
That's crazy, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a gift.
Yeah.
And that's how I view it. It's a gift. What I'm going to do for you today, nobody else will do for you. And for that reason, I know you're going to trust me. That's how I view it. So.
Great.
Sweet.
Oh.
Wow.
That's awesome.
See, and that's what's cool is like, you don't need to up your skill. You just needed to view the situation differently. You already have the skill.
Yeah.
You just got to figure out what's the objective on the action. Any other questions? Or are we good?
I'm good.
Good.
Yeah, well,
That was great.
That's good. Oh, yeah.
Awesome.